Okay, hello everyone. This is the game 12 of Steinitz versus Chigorin match, which was held in Havanna in 1889. And at this point, well, uh, Chigorin was 1 point down, so he was trying to win this game to equal the match. So Steinitz started with the knight f3 because this move brought him success, so why not? So after d5, d4, bishop g4, Chigorin goes for the same line. It's not that it sounds sound, it's a fine line. Unless he goes crazy later like he did in the previous game. Knight c6, e3, and now e6. Chigorin decides not to go crazy like in previous game and played a sensible move. Of course, he could play e5 instead. But this is what he played in the previous game. But after queen b3, bishop takes f3, g takes f3, e takes d4, c takes d5, knight e5, e takes d4, knight d7. This was the position in their previous game, and Chigorin was 2 pawns down, but had an interesting position, although he couldn't attack Steinitz center well enough and lost that game. So now he decides to simply just play solidly, a little bit solidly. Now knight c3, bishop b4, bishop d2, all standard so far, just standard Chigorin defense. Knight g7, bishop d3, bishop f5, exchanging these bishops. C takes d5, e takes d5, and now queen b3 from Steinitz. Bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3. And so far both sides have been playing normally. And here Chigorin decides not to weaken his pawn structure, and at some point have option of playing b5 as well. So he plays rook b8. Of course he could play b6 as well. Now Steinitz castles and Chigorin castles. At least the opening is fine for both sides. None of them is lost. So rook a c1, and Chigorin just gets the half-open file, developing a rook, and now bishop d2 starts protecting this e-pawn. Now knight c7 and rook c2. Now Steinitz decides to double on the c file, which looks like easily counterable by c6, but ironically that pawn will be center of attention soon. So c6 from Chigorin and rook fc1. I mean, it just looks bizarre, right? Because because c6 blocks both rooks. Why would Steinitz play like this? Now, knight g6, Chigorin continues his plan, and after bishop e1, because bishop on d2 was badly placed, and also this bishop would help defending. And now knight f2 h4. So Chigorin starts his attack. It certainly looks promising, and Steinitz decides to exchange one of the knights and play f3. So this means that he could be able to defend his e-pawn with the bishop soon, and also this bishop can also assist the king. So now let's see what happens. Knight f5, and now bishop f2. This bishop found a better square, and now queen g5. Chigorin is attacking, but Steinitz is defending pretty well. Rook e1, defending, rook e6. Now Chigorin wants to swing his rook, and e4. Brilliant break from Steinitz. Because I think that, well, if he plays rook c2, rook g6 looks scary. So Steinitz wants to break the center and attack the knight. So instead, e4 was played, and then rook b8, and then rook c2. Now the knight is attacked. It has to move somewhere. If it moves to h6, now this is like a misplaced knight because the knight has no squares to go to. So Chigorin decides to play knight d6, but now the attack has fizzled out, because now Steinitz even closes the center with e5, and now queen d8. Of course, the knight can be taken yet, and basically Steinitz not only defended well, but also is now pressuring Chigorin. King f1. Now the knight can be taken because the rooks are protected, and now knight c4. it seems that the knight found some good square, but actually Steinitz just takes this pawn now. And basically it seems that Chigorin is going to lose this game because the queen side fell apart and Chigorin's attack did not materialize. So queen g5 was played. So, continuing the attack because the queen side is just gone now. Now queen b4, Steinitz returns back. He took the pawn, he doesn't need any more pawns yet. And now rook g6. Now mate threatens, so bishop g3. Steinitz could play, of course, g3, but this is a bit weakening and h5 is going to come. So, okay, bishop g3, h5, and now b3, attacking this knight. Because this knight has no good squares, and of course it restricts at the moment black's queen. So if the knight moves, then the white's queen will have more freedom. So knight b6 was played. There was a possibility to just ignore this and play h4, and after b takes c4, h takes g3, h3. Even this looks bad for black, but at least with the pawn on g3, maybe there is something here. But of course, knight b6 was a perfectly valid move as well. Okay, queen d2. Steinitz won the pawn and now simply wants to exchange queens, and black's attack will never materialize. So queen f5, Chigorin refuses. Now Steinitz again obliges, Chigorin again refuses, and Chigorin realizes he's busted and offers a draw basically, because if they repeat too many times then it will be a draw. Now king g1 was played, so Steinitz simply avoids the draw and also improves the position of his king. Knight c8. Now this knight wants to find the square, but alas, it can't. So queen c2, now again threatening, so queen d7 because the black pawn was attacked as well, and Chigorin goes to defend his queen side. Now bishop h4. Bishop improves his position a little bit, and of course, well, at the moment there is no pressure on g2 as well. I mean, it's very well defended as well. So knight b6, knight is somehow trying to go somewhere, but okay. Steinitz is just improving the position. Queen d3, so that he can enter the queen side anytime. And now knight a8. This knight has been moving a lot. f4, and now finally Steinitz decides to break with the pawns. And also now that king g1 earlier was good because the king is out of the line of anything on the f-file. Knight c7, and now bishop f2. I mean, Steinitz returns back because there is nothing to do on h4. And perhaps c5 could be played at some point by black, and he wants to stay solid and protect everything. So queen g4, Chigorin is desperately trying to pose some threats, but bishop e3, simply bishop reroutes and protects both of these pawns, and f5, preventing Steinitz from playing f5. I think this was the best practical chance, but of course in doing so he gives Steinitz a passed e-pawn. At the moment there are many pieces, but maybe if the pieces get exchanged, this passed pawn would be huge. So rook f2. Now Steinitz probably wants to exchange queens soon. Now rook g6, blockading that pawn, and now queen e2. Also, this rook move before was to give queen some breathing room, and now he can avoid exchange of queens easily. Now rook f3. Now the white's rook is becoming active. So queen f7 and rook g3. Now it's Steinitz who puts the rook opposite the enemy king. King h7, and now bishop f2. Rook h6. So now threatening h4, but Steinitz doesn't worry about that. And now rook c8, because now the c-pawn is becoming a problem for Chigorin. So he tries to defend it. Of course, if now h4 was played by Chigorin, then rook h3 simply picks up that pawn, or at least, the pressure will increase from white after queen e1 as well. So rook g to c3. Now Steinitz decides, to play simply. I have one pawn, and the other pawn is weak. I'll get it. And knight e6 was played. Now here, of course, if rook takes c6, then knight takes f4 looks not nice. I mean, allowing too much. So Steinitz played queen a6, entering the position with a queen, correct move, and increasing the pressure. And now rook g8. So Chigorin loses patience and goes all out. Now, of course, he wants to play g5 at some point in the attack. So can Steinitz defend this and secure his 2-pawn lead? Because after rook takes e6, he's up 2 pawns. So knight takes f4, winning back 1 pawn, and now rook takes h6, g takes h6, and now bishop g3. So Steinitz thought that, okay, I can make this position solid, but I think this simply allowed too much counterplay, and Chigorin will be given some drawing chances later on, as we see. Rook g6, good move, kicking the queen away, and now knight e6, returning back, threatening f4. So queen d3 was played, because if f4 will be played now, then rook will be pinned, and then rook f1 will come. And here I think that, well, this is the most critical moment of the game. If Chigorin had found this ingenious combination, he would at least get a draw, at least. He played rook g4, which looks good, it attacks the weak d pawn, but actually h4, very interesting stuff. Now, if the bishop moves, black will play the same move, so why not take the pawn? So bishop takes h4, now rook g2 check, king h1, and black is here in the driving seat, actually, because now rook takes a2, and Steinitz has to find like the only moves to defend this position. And this counterattack simply saves white. Because, for example, now rook f1 is the best move, but then knight g7 protects the pawn and keeps all threats going. So I think that this would have been a great try for Chigorin. Instead, he plays rook g4, and now h3, and now rook takes d4. This also looks like a nice counterplay, but Steinitz finds the most promising continuation with queen a6 again, because he wants to double on the 6th rank. Now here I think that Chigorin goes on an adventure with his rook. Well, he played rook d2, and we'll see all these lines now. So after queen a6, he could have played f4, and after bishop f2, rook e4, and keeps good threats, because now the e-pawn is falling, and this looks like a good continuation. Instead, after queen a6, rook d2 was played, but now bishop e1 was played, and the bishop moves out of the g3 square, and f4 would have given black tempo, right, in the previous variation. Now it doesn't, and now rook returns to d4, but now there is no tempo with f4, so rook c6 is now winning, and black is just busted here, because basically Chigorin lost a move, and also lost the f4 push, which would have been a push with the tempo. Rook e4, but now this is too late. In the previous variation, the rook would be here and Chigorin would be attacking it already. Rook takes e6, Chigorin lost a piece, and after rook takes e1, here this is a very interesting position as well. So, Steinitz blundered here. He played king h2, which is very weird actually, because, well, first of all, rook takes h6 is threatened. So why give black one more move? For example, if king f2 here, there are no checks, and the rook has to move, and after the rook moves, then obviously rook takes h6 is winning. So it seems very weird that Steinitz put the king on h2, because now Chigorin could have simply played, he played rook c1, but he could have played queen g7 now, protecting the h6, and also well, here protecting the h6 and also going forward. And okay, there might be some threats here after f4, and white is defending okay. Also, he could take on e5 with a check. I mean, this looks very interesting. So queen d6 would have been played by Steinitz to protect his e5 pawn. But after rook e2 threatening mate now, and rook e7 should have been played, but now rook takes g2 is a draw by perpetual. So this is very lovely. Let's look at this again. So after king h2 was played by Steinitz, Chigorin could have played queen g7, threatening the e5 pawn twice. So queen d6 was forced because to defend that pawn, but now rook e2 threatens mate. And after rook e7, winning a queen? No, because rook takes g2 is a draw by perpetual. King will move to h1, and rook g1 check, and so on and so on. But after king h2, rook c1 was played, a brutal error. And now after rook f6, this is just over, because queen g7 is played now, but now queen e6, and now rook f7 is threatened, and basically there is nothing that Chigorin can do here, because there is no attack on the e5 pawn, and this simply looks gone. Well, for example, if queen g, if here, for example, rook f6, what could have been played here? Well, I think that just rook takes e5 looks sufficient. But here, after rook moved, now after rook f6, there is no pressure on e5, and thus Chigorin is winning. Chigorin is losing, sorry. So queen g7, queen e6, rook f1, but now rook f7 is simply gone. So that's why the rook had to be on f2 now to threaten this perpetual check. So it seems that Steinitz played very good positional game, very good defensive game, and then at some point he blundered twice. A very uncharacteristic and weird blunder with king h2 actually, because he liked to use king as an attacking piece. But it seems that, yeah, Chigorin was very good at finding some interesting counterplay, but he wasn't really that good in following it up correctly. He found some nice counterplay twice, but then he failed to find the continuation, proper continuation, and Steinitz simply on average played better game. And the way he repelled Chigorin's attack was very instructive. Thank you.